It is such a pleasure for us to have you all from different parts of the world. Not easy to bring everybody, but such a pleasure to see all of you here safe in your hotels. Today is the India Day, and which means that we put a spotlight on what's going on in India, what discussions. It also happens to be pilot of BIAN Civic Forum. BIAN Civic Forum is a new initiative of BIAN, which is a platform to bring different actors of the civil society and also different stakeholders to come together and converse about why or why not basic income.
Hello, my name is Louise Haag. I'm the chair of the Basic Income Earth Network. And I'm absolutely delighted to be able to introduce our first Civic Forum, our first BIAN Civic Forum in Hyderabad, India, on the 22nd of August 2019. I want to say a few words about the inspiration for the Civic Forum. BIAN is a very old network formed in 1986, which for many years, the first couple of decades at least, comprised primarily academics and policymakers who had visions for basic income, yet which discussed basic income very much amongst themselves. The inspiration for the Civic Forum was to draw in critics and societal actors and groups practically involved in administering the welfare state, as well as practically involved in different aspects of social reproduction and production, to help us understand at a practical level what the uses of a basic income might be in their work, and also what the obstacles might be in terms of how a basic income would be funded, how a basic income would work in practice, and especially what else a basic income would need in order to be effective. And I think we only really understand these contentious issues if we talk to people who are practically engaged in governing development on a daily basis. There are many polemics around basic income. Basic income has its critics, and many of the critiques are entirely justified from a practical perspective, in particular in relation to the impression that many have that basic income would replace existing services and institutions, or indeed that its effect depend on them. And it's to learn more about these co-effects between basic income and other institutions of governance in society at all levels that we wanted to put forward the Civic Forum as a new model of engaging beyond the academia and beyond activism as well, with critics and with those engaged in development at a practical level. And I'm very pleased that we're having this Civic Forum today. We have a series of Civic Forums to follow from the Civic Forum in India, the next one in Scotland in November this year, and we hope to have one again in Australia at the BIAN Congress next year, and to roll this out as a model for engaging policymakers and the wider public. And we also hope to use our findings to display the debates that are ongoing in Civic Forum on our web pages, so that we have a repository of the findings and debates that are taking place. And with this, I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you very much for taking part. Thank you.
I request Ms. Renana Jabwala, who is the chair of Self-Employed Women's Association, and also the person behind the pilot study of India. Renana Ben.
Thank you, Sharad. It's my very pleasant duty to welcome both the international participants and our Indian brothers and sisters to this 19th Congress of the Basic Income Earth Network, BIAN. And we are really happy that for the first time ever, this conference is held in India. And as you will hear through the day today, The Indian interest in basic income is very new, I think not more than 7 or 8 years, and it has grown very fast. So having you all here is very, very timely. I'd like to welcome you to India, to Hyderabad, and especially to Nalsar. Nalsar, where you are now, is the preeminent law university in India. Some professors here have taken up the cause of basic income, so we thank them both for this space and for the welcome. Before we do anything else, may I invite Mr. P.D. Rai to the stage. I would like to introduce him. He is from Sikkim. He was an MP, a member of parliament, and a staunch champion of basic income. So, welcome, Mr. P.D. Rai. Before we start Mr. Rai's session, I would like to start this congress, in a traditional Indian manner, and I'd like some of the founders of the Indian Network for Basic Income to please come on the stage and help us to light the lamp. So, Sarad Davla, please come on the stage. Amita Dan, Soumya Kapoor, Shikha Joshi, and guys standing.
A couple of months ago, when I read in the newspapers that in Sikkim, Mr. P.D. Rai announced that we will give a full universal basic income to the entire population of Sikkim. I immediately wrote a letter to him. I picked up his email address from the internet. I finished the letter. I went out to fetch a glass of water. There was a call. I answered the call. He said, P.D. Rai here. I want to talk to you. So our conversation began like that. In India, I think we have had many proposals, many ideas, and they were not classical universal basic income the way we understand universal basic income, universal, unconditional, individual, and all that. But it was only in the Sikkim announcement, Mr. Rai's announcement of his party, and it came out in its manifesto, a whole section, an annexure was there on universal basic income, explaining what it is and why it is necessary for the population of Sikkim. So it's our honor to invite him for this, and I request him to give the inaugural address. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, very good morning and namaskar to all of you who are present here today. It's a very special occasion, and at the outset, I must thank Saridji for inviting me here, and also the India Basic Income Group, the Nalsar University of Law, and the organizers to be a part and also to be in both spirit as well as physically with the entire group here. I've already had a stellar start with meeting some meeting Paul and Ananya, if I've got the name correctly, at the airport, and then we had this 1-hour drive down to the resort, and we, it just started off talking about all the things that are possible. So let me join Madam Jadwala for this welcome to all the delegates who have come from abroad. Please have a wonderful stay in India. This is a very interesting times for India, as much as it is for the world. And as I was telling you that, I've committed the entire 4 days to be here, and I would like to take the opportunity of, reaching out to each one of you and hear the thousands of stories that must be there about your own experiences as you move on this journey of the universal basic income. So we are in India at, as I said, in interesting times. Universal basic income, social justice, farmers' welfare, universal health coverage, all kinds of insurance, health insurance policies, a lot of Prime Minister's initiatives. These are all finding its place in terms of a huge discourse that is happening in our country. And so I would like to first start, because I think the recurrent theme would emanate from this quote, which I've taken from Dr. Guy Standing's book. It is just opposite the preface of the book on basic income which he has written. And it's attributed to Barbara Wotton, the famous sociologist and criminologist who passed away, I think, in the 80s. So the quote is, "It is from the champions of the impossible, rather than the slaves of the possible, that evolution draws its creative force." So let me read it. "It is from the champions of the impossible, rather than the slaves of the possible, that evolution draws its creative force." And this is the kind of, this is the inspiration with which I'm sure each one of you must be working. Now, there is a question that I've asked myself ever since Saratji asked me to come and give a talk out here. I guess it's just because I'm a politician, I'm a political leader, somebody who chose not to fight the elections this time round, and just because we've had some very good interaction, that he thought that I should be here. So I just asked this question to myself: was I destined to be here? And I say, I think so, because I believe that many of these serendipitous moments lead to huge outcomes. And it has happened many times in my life, and I'm grateful for each one of those life-changing moments. My first brush with basic income was when it appeared in the economic survey authored by the Chief Economic Advisor to Government of India, Arvind Subramanian. And this was in 2016. And he wrote a full chapter on basic income. And my first reading of that drew the same standard reaction, which was, how can we give money away just like that? We all, as we grow up, have been conditioned to getting something after giving something. I guess the only ones who give us anything unconditionally are our parents. And I guess the only time we value that is when it's already too late. So my response was Pavlovian at best. It's the conditioned response. How can we give away money just like that? Then I reread this article, this chapter. And I started thinking about it more and more. And this idea actually stayed with me for a very long time and stayed the course. Of course, our Honorable Finance Minister then, Arun Jaitley ji, he dismissed it, saying that's a good idea. And that's the way politicians will always talk. It's a good idea, but we can't afford it just yet. Or we'll have to get rid of all the other social benefits and then only we can give it. And so that's the way it was dismissed, and no real debate actually ensued. But today, reflecting back, I think what he should have done was send it to one of the committees, either the Social Justice Committee or the Committee on Finance, of which I was a member for almost 8 years. And perhaps in those committees it could have been looked in more deeply, because they would then, invite people, and maybe Sarajji would have deposed in front of one of the committees, if that were to happen. But anyway, that's water under the bridge. Then something else happened. I have a very young friend. His name is Karma Bhutia. He's a tech entrepreneur. He lives and works out of Bangalore. One of his trips to Delhi, he met with me. And he said that he's working with artificial intelligence. And I quizzed him. I said, artificial intelligence, what will it do to people? And he said, artificial intelligence is going to remove most of the mundane jobs. And therefore, he argued, because he'd also read about basic income, and we were discussing this, and he said that basic income is the way forward. In fact, he had tweeted about it. He had read a lot more than me about basic income, and therefore I was educated from him a lot more. Young people, I understand, and you'll see that. Young people are the ones in today's world who are actually far more attracted by these kinds of policies, public policies. Then in 2017, under the aegis of the Integrated Mountain Initiative, a civil society organization that wants to make India proud of its mountains. I'm a mountain man, and therefore I'm one of the founders of the IMI. We initiated a discussion on the Sustainable Development Goals and how we could create a far-reaching legislation in the Sikkim, to be taken up in the Sikkim Legislative Assembly, which would legislate a bill to bring in the Sustainable Development Goals as something which would be central to the ideas, all the ideas of development that henceforth would take place. This was done in the most participatory manner. We had panchayats, we had members of the Legislative Assembly, we had our ministers and others on board, discussed with them, and then created what is then known as the Well-Being of Generations Bill 2017. It was built on equitable principles and generational equity as well. It was constructed with professional legal assistance. We managed to also garner funding for this from the Swiss Development Cooperation. We thank them. It was an idea that would ensure that all development work would be done keeping in mind the people of Sikkim, and the lens would have to be the fulfillment of the Sustainable Development Goals. This had an element that would enable universal basic income kind of ideas to take root and be programmed through the processes that would ensue. It was driven with the goal of self-sufficiency and to ensure harmony of the people with the mountains and the biodiversity of Sikkim. And so this was again another one of those very interesting departures in thought leadership, which Sikkim is well known for. In October 2018, and I'm talking about this journey of mine, the Ministry of External Affairs nominated a group of parliamentarians to represent India in the United Nations General Assembly. Every year, they send a group of about 10 to 12 parliamentarians just to understand how multilateralism works, how the United Nations work. And it was during that time in New York that I walked into the public library in Bryant Park. I wanted to understand what a public library felt like in New York. I was chairing the Library Committee of Parliament of India, and hence my keen interest. I was happy to notice there were plenty of people using the facility. I browsed around looking at all kinds of books available and how technology was disrupting libraries. Then a book on a shelf caught my eye. It was this book. It was this book. And serendipitously, I picked it up and started looking at it. And immediately I knew this was the book that I had to refer to, because I had to go all the way to New York. Even Saraji hadn't contacted me. And so therefore, in my travels, I picked up this book. I actually downloaded the e-version immediately and started reading. But then, in that library, I started looking at the chapters, and chapter 12 caught my eye. It is the last chapter. And the last chapter is about the political challenge. How to get there from here. Rarely does one read a book starting with the last chapter. But in this particular case, I thought, let me start from here anyway. And so this is how this book became very, very special. And throughout my journeys, I started reading this book. From there, we went to Rome. I had to go to Rome to, along with my chief minister, we had to get an award at the FAO for our organic farming. So back in India, in November 2018, the idea of giving respite to distressed farmers by waiving their farm loans was a major issue confronting the Narendra Modi-led NDA government. The state elections to Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh were lost to the Congress party mainly because of this particular issue. And by the way, till today, I just fail to understand why that momentum was lost by the Congress party, and they were soundly beaten in the general elections. It was just a few months before that they had won resoundingly in the state elections, but then had to bow out in the Lok Sabha elections. So, some form of basic income was being proposed by all parties as electoral promises. And this was, therefore, basic income, in my opinion. It was at that time, once the political parties started looking at it a little more, and many of them proposed variants of it. Some said, give it to only one section of the population. Some people said, let's give it to just households. Give it to farmer households, and so on and so forth. So, but however, the point is, I think basic income in one form or the other, that is direct transfers of money to people, is something whose idea and whose time had come. So we in the Sikkim Democratic Front party, this is back in Sikkim, announced the UBI would be launched in Sikkim as well. I was sitting with a group of journalists in New Delhi. When I told them about this, they really flipped. I didn't realize it was such a big thing. Suddenly they started saying, should we announce it? I said, no, hang on. So they said, no, we should be the first one to know. And I said, okay, sure. And so it was inside my room in Parliament that I announced it a few days later, because I had to take clearance from my party and from my boss, and so having done all of that, we announced it in Delhi. immediately Indian Express was the first one off the block, and they announced it. After that, it went from paper to paper to paper, and I remember on the 16th of January this year, even the Washington Post called me up and they carried my response. So it really had a resonance all over the world. And now that I'm here with you and I'm seeing so many people from all over the world come here, now I realize why this is such an idea whose really the time has not only come, but I think something that we all should put our thoughts together and move it forward. I did find a little bit I started looking at bien. We call it bien. In the way I just said it's bien. I even contemplating writing to guys standing about this. That is just before I wanted to know more. But then I managed to somehow get Saratji. He has already told you how, but I don't know the sequence, but it just seemed so important to get connected to Saratji. And the interesting thing is, he came across to Delhi and he said, let's talk. And we had a chat. He agreed to help me, and that's when, there is a full appendix. I brought a hard copy of the manifesto of our party here, which I think you don't have a copy, do you? No, I haven't given you a copy. So there is an appendix, and I think a lot of it has been written by him because, we didn't have time. We just didn't have time. Things were moving so fast that, I had to take Sarat's help, and I must have thanked him. I must have thanked you, I'm sure. But, today I have brought you a copy of the same. And then we created a video, which we'll show you a little later, which tells you the kind of effort put in to explain this. Of course, we explained it in press conferences, we explained it in our meetings, we explained it in our speeches, in our election, in the way it was supposed to be done. But this video is something which is very, very catchy because it actually is the positioning, the political positioning. It brings out the political positioning, which is so very important. Otherwise, it's very difficult without making it politically palatable. It is very difficult to sell this idea. This idea was also picked up by a rival party in Sikkim, led by a popular footballer, Baichung Bhutia. He floated an independent local party called the Hamro Sikkim Party, the HSP, and he also made a pitch for a universal basic income. But obviously, the basic income had all its flaws, which would naturally, if you haven't gone more deep into this, there would be some, trouble in terms of targeting or not making it fully universal, or also ensuring and not also seeing, also making it conditional. So his basic income had all these flaws. And I intend to actually co-opt him in this process because I'm sure that there was something that resonated with him. Now that the hustings are over, it's always good to have somebody like Baichung Bhutia, who is a known face in Sikkim, who can possibly be a good ambassador for this. Today, we're in Telangana. It's a state which was carved out from erstwhile Andhra Pradesh in 2013. Amidst a lot of heartburn. This was done by an act of parliament under the 15th Lok Sabha, in which I was there. The present TRS party that governs spearheaded the Telangana movement. The fight in Parliament was ugly, but that's another very long story, and I don't want to get into that. Interestingly, the present government has also launched a very innovative scheme for farmers. It's called the Yu Bandhu. I think Sarath has written extensively about it. The Farmer Investment Support, which has some elements of the UBI built into the scheme, like it being unconditional. This kind of innovation is possible when regional parties are governing states. And somehow, this ensures much more leeway for innovation. Many believe that this scheme helped TRS win the elections, both at the state level as well as in the general elections. They won 9 seats out of 17, I understand. Today, there's a lot of threat for all regional parties. Regionalism was at its height in 2009 and 14. In fact, many political pundits thought that they thought about talking about more federated structure, more independence to states, etc. But after the 2019 elections, there's a complete reversal. There's a complete and an accelerated reversal. So now, regionalism, in my opinion, is looking very, very shaky. Now, this is not good for Indian politics, but that's the way it is. Today, more than ever, there's a growing feeling among regional players that one has to be aligned with the central government, which is a very, very strong central government. In Sikkim, my party, the Sikkim Democratic Front party, which had ruled Sikkim for 25 years, Mr. Pawan Chamlin was the chief minister from 1994 to 2019. Can be rightly proud of the achievements of Sikkim, from peace in the border state to the highest levels of human development across rural areas as well. In our midst, I think Dr. A.K. Shivakumar is supposed to be there. Has he come? Oh, there he is. Dr. A.K. Shivakumar can reel off all the statistics of what kinds of achievements Sikkim has made. After all, he has authored the Human Development Report of Sikkim 2014. Amongst many achievements of Sikkim, the world-renowned organic farming state, which won the Agroecology Future Award from the United Nations, is a highlight. It got us global attention. Furthermore, Sikkim has been a leader in attaining social justice and gender justice goals. Many of the programs that we have in this social justice sector are highly innovative. Hence, would universal basic income have been possible if the SDF government had come back to power in 2019? And I'm very sure that it would, given the kind of leadership we had shown in attaining the social justice goals itself. And therefore, we made it one of the key elements in our party manifesto. Of course, it was done in a hurry, with little preparation, and our party apparatus to take it to the masses, they had some difficulty. We had very little time. However, I would like to show you a 2-minute video we made to market this through the social media, especially WhatsApp.
प्रिय सिक्किमे जनता, यो सूचना जनहितमा प्रसारण भइरहेको छ। युनिभर्सल बेसिक इन्कम भनेको के हो त? यो चाहिँ फेरि एउटा नयाँ स्किम मात्र होइन, तर एउटा एकदमै नयाँ विचार हो सिक्किम र सिक्किमेको लागि। यो सबै सिक्किमेको आर्थिक सशक्तिकरण हुने एउटा आधुनिक क्रान्ति हो। यो भनेको चाहिँ युनिभर्सल बेसिक इन्कम मार्फत प्रत्येक सिक्किमेले आफ्नो जीविका चलाउन चाहिने न्यूनतम आय चाहिँ एसडीएफ सरकारले नै दिने। किनभने आजको समयमा आर्थिक सुरक्षा नै सबैभन्दा ठूलो सुरक्षा हो। तर यो सुविधा सबैले हासिल गर्नु सजिलो छैन। तर हामी ठान्छौं कि आर्थिक सुरक्षा सबै सिक्किमे जनताको हक हो। सबै धर्म, सबै जातपात, सबै वर्गको लागि, बुढा बुढी, केटा केटी, गरिब धनी, नारी पुरुष, अफिसमा कलम चलाउने होस् या बारीमा काम गर्ने होस्, सबै सिक्किमे जनताको लागि। 2019 मा एसडिएफ सरकार गठन गरेपछि हामीले यो सम्भव गर्नेछौँ। अब यो युनिभर्सल बेसिक इन्कम अथवा सिक्किम डिभिडेन्ड फन्ड सिक्किमे जनताले कसरी पाउनेछ त? सबै सिक्किमे जनताको ब्याङ्क अकाउन्टमा कुनै अफिस नधाई, कुनै फर्म नभरी अनि कसैको अगाडि नझुकिकन। अनि यसको फाइदाहरू के छन् त? गरिबले यो पैसा पाएर गरी खान सक्ने, आर्थिक सुरक्षाले गर्दा मालिकको अत्याचार सहनु नपर्ने, नारीहरू कसैको अधीनमा बस्नु नपर्ने, युवा वर्गहरू आफै आफ्नो खुट्टामा उभिन सक्ने, बुढेसकालमा पनि नाता नातिनीलाई पकेट मनी दिन क्षमता हुने। अब क्रान्ति भनेको त यस्तो हुनु पर्यो नि, सबैको लागि, सधैँको लागि।
So, in this journey of taking it to people, I've met a lot of young people, especially educated, college-going, researchers, and so on and so forth. And whenever they were shown this video, most of them threw a lot of questions, but were in the end, ultimately, they were the ones who thought that it was absolutely possible. So, many questions came up, and I was very happy that these questions came up. I was able to sharpen the answers, debate, to all the questions, to all the concerns, and so on and so forth. Presently in Sikkim, we have a divided house. 25 years at the helm, despite all the great governance and achievements, tires the public. Vested interests take precedence. That is one of the reasons the Sikkim well-being of generations bill never saw the light of day, despite lots of support from all around. The SDF lost mandate narrowly on 23rd of May 2019. Suddenly, after all these years of stable governance in Sikkim, political turmoil has begun, which is very, very unfamiliar culture and phenomenon to us, and especially to the people and public at large. But politicians like me are always optimistic. We now have the opportunity of full 5 years to sharpen the discourse and to be prepared for the elections of 2024. We will have to rebuild the party and change gears as we must. I also think not just Sikkim, the entire northeastern states, the 8 states of India will see merit in the universal basic income. Sparsely populated, but with huge resources like hydropower, potential, forests, and biodiversity. This is the richest part of India in terms of natural capital. These are the commons that will have to be tapped to fund the basic income. These are the states where chief ministers will definitely look at basic income as a great new way of getting social justice going. It is simple, it is universal, and not encumbered. It will be politically astute too. I would like to make 3 points before I close. The first, I believe that the turmoil, political and economic, leading to social disorder happening across the world is going to create a greater need for the UBI. I do believe the reasons for social unrest is clear, and not just what the media wants us to believe it is for. In the case of India, the more centralization happens, the more regional parties can make UBI a central pillar for garnering political support. Number 2, I served in Parliament's Standing Committee on Finance for over 7 years. When we were confronted by the extent of non-performing assets in the banking sector, I was appalled. Just a fraction was needed to fund the UBI in Sikkim and the Northeast as a whole. This is not only the area of great waste. There are many like this. And non-performing assets are those assets which, that means money has been loaned to parties and these run into thousands of crores and they are not refunded. So both capital and interest get stuck. There are many like these kinds of waste that are happening. Hence, just cleaning up much of this mess will free up enough public funds for social dividends. Number 3. Sikkim's own natural resources of hydropower and tourism, if sold and taxed properly, will generate the resources to fund UBI in Sikkim. Such like resources are plentiful in the northeastern states of India. This is where the opportunity lies. Finally, I believe we are at the crossroads all around the world. I have had the pleasure of meeting a few friends, and hence their stories is enough evidence which points to this. I would like to run on the side of what we think is impossible, as there is both challenge and innovation waiting for us there. God bless us all. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. P.D. Rai. Academicians and activists that most of us are, we are like cooks. We have a recipe, we don't have a recipe, but we try to cook, come out with new ideas, advocate new ideas, but at the end of the day, somebody has to consume it, somebody has to receive it, somebody has to like it, and somebody has to implement it. So finally, I think the role of politics and politicians is so important. And it gladdens my heart when I see people like Mr. P.D. Rai, very few of them are there these days, who have picked up an idea which, with a spiritual and with a philosophical undertone. So thank you so much, sir, for your inaugural speech.